بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Today's topic is of course a bit controversial, as this subject is mainly due to, I would say, lack of education when it comes to this. As I said, even contemporary, there's quite a lot of books that have talked about intimacy. Even in the Ihya Ulumuddin, there's some things related to that. There's a book on Fatawa, a Hanafi reference book, Al-Fatawa Al-Hindiya. Which obviously you find usually that Hanafis are very strict on this. Well, I wouldn't say Hanafis, I would say maybe the subcontinent. But again, it's not a generalization. Sometimes you get a lot of the, people might have issues with that culturally. Imam Suyuti, some books attributed to him. There's a Hanafi scholar that has written something contemporary on this in English. It's translated in English. There's quite a lot of, because it's why is intimacy important? We live in this society where intimacy has become the focus of media, and it's in the face of everyone. So a lot of people have questions about this, and things have changed obviously over with the culture, and a lot of interesting questions come up also because of the movies that are out there, the porn and all that a lot of Muslims are exposed to before marriage, during marriage, and so on. Let it not be something strange to know that some Muslims do watch porn even when they're married. Some Muslims do view porn together, and this is totally forbidden, of course. There's, when something is forbidden and it's clear, because you're not supposed to look at someone else's body, you're not supposed to look at someone else who's not mahram to you, to engage in this, and even just forget about engaging. We're talking about just a naked body. So things become clear cut. When there's something unclear, or there's no evidence on it, and people start making fatwas, we have to look at the difference of opinion and not just be like, this is not allowed, right? So when it comes to sex, because a lot of cultural stigma is attached to it, there's a lot of scholars who have said certain things are impermissible as their fatwas, as their ijtihad on it. And that can be challenged. People need to understand. Why? Because we want to? No, it's because it has to be based on proof and evidence, right? And there's circumstantial evidence sometimes, there's direct evidence, there's evidence based on deduction and different types of evidence that they use. So we try to understand that. When it comes to certain sexual acts or certain intimacy acts, the issue of enjoyment and what's to spice it up, what's allowed, what's not allowed comes in. And when you look online, you'll find that in the English language there's not a lot that talks about that. There's not a lot that talks about that. There is a recent book in Arabic called The Bride's Veil that talks about intimacy. So today we're going to talk about the issue of enjoying intimacy, the positions that can happen, and what can be done to spice up things. And we're going to talk about oral sex. So first and foremost, we talk about positions. We see that positions, there are some references to positions. Some hadith even attribute to Umar Khattab, talking about how he approached his wife and that he told the Prophet, I'm destroyed. And the Prophet explained to him what it was, so it was a position from the back. Some of the Sahaba asked when they moved to Medina about sideways and different positions, because the people of Medina had a certain culture about how they would have intimacy, right? So in terms of position, every position is allowed. There's only one thing that's not allowed, a specific spot, which is the anus. Okay, that is not allowed to be penetrated. It is very, very clear for that. The Prophet made it very clear that Allah will not look at a man who approaches his wife in the back, not from the back, in the back. Okay, so from the back position is allowed, is enjoyable. Different people like different positions. Certain women and men can only climax in certain positions. So it's important for couples to explore that. That doesn't mean you only have to do it from that position. Some people start, because they climax on that position, they start doing only in that position, and becomes, of course, sometimes quite boring. There's been some cultural fatwas that happen where, for example, they believe that a man should not look at the aura of his wife, which is totally It's baseless, right? But again, you will see these fatwas coming in, just so people understand when we're going to talk about oral sex, why some of these fatwas are not necessarily binding. So the Prophet ﷺ used to take a bath with his wives, and they used to look at each other's, obviously, private parts in their bodies. Okay, so that negates and refutes this type of thing that, sadly, in some cultures, they only allow to undress the part. It's dark, you cannot see only the part of the body that's going to be penetrated, and that's it. And, you know, for children only, they will not use intimacy as pleasure. So bottom line, there's a lot of discussion on this, just to make it very simple. It is allowed, every position is allowed, okay? Back, up, top, down, left, right, from the side, different stretching positions depending on the flexibility. These things are, you know, mubah. There's nothing wrong with them. As long as the couple are okay, they don't hurt each other, they take it together, they discuss it, they, you know, don't force each other, and they enjoy each other, and they can try all kinds of things, okay? And that is okay, and to enjoy, to spice up things. Different positions allow for certain penetration spots and allow for things to be feel different way. So it's good to try that. And as I said, sometimes women have a harder time to climax, and again, it's because it depends on the spots that are touched. And we've talked about in the previous lecture about a women's orgasmic spots and different spots that can help with stimulation and with orgasm. So different positions, depend on how it is, will stimulate those parts and will make the woman climax faster and better. So that can be explored and talked about and understood and, you know, guided. This feels good, that doesn't, this is good, I feel okay here, and so on and so forth. And that, again, between the husband and wife, to be very open about it so they can actually enjoy this, you know, intimacy. And there is nothing wrong with that. Of course, in terms of, you know, dressing up and, you know, talking, that's very important. The stimulation of the talk is very important, especially for the woman. And to prepare, and that's what the Prophet said, send messengers, you know, touches and kisses. Foreplay is very important, but foreplay is not always. Sometimes you might just want to jump into it, and it depends again on the mood. Okay, follow the mood. Sometimes you can set things up and prepare, but sometimes just the mood dictates whether you want to take it easy, soft, harder. All these things are allowed as long as the communication is there, as long as both of you are cool with it and it helps, and, you know, you kind of, you know, just go into it and agree and enjoy yourselves, right? Sometimes just the desire, you just want to, you know, get into it, and that's okay. But in general, the Prophet's advice is to build up the momentum, right? Because I think I've said it before, one of the scholars said that the woman is like an oven, so you need to get the right temperature in. Okay, you need to set up the right temperature. While the man is more like a microwave, you know, it's just very simple. It can get the temperature hotter, but not all the time. It's not just, you know, there are exceptions. Some men need more stimulation and more things to get, you know, warm up. So dressing up, you know, for the female and the man, you know, to be handsome, to look good, to look clean, to be attractive, to have muscular mass, to you know, to look nice, and to seduce each other in a halal way. Just husband and wife is very nice. You know, not just like, okay, we're gonna have, you know, intimacy tonight. No, like have some seduction, some interaction, some talk, some, you know, certain indirect, you know, you make appeal to it, that, oh, this is what we're gonna do. So it kind of like builds that desire, right? It's like that, just the thoughts of it can build the hormonal changes and can really turn on both genders. So that is important in spicing up. So dressing up, you know, like massage, using different oils that are halal and tayyib are very good, can spice up things again, you know, massages, you know, putting up candles, candle lights, just kind of setting the mood, just kind of preparing, right? Because it is not something you just jump into it like an animal, right? It's supposed to find the mood. And sometimes people talk about, okay, she's not in the mood, I'm not in the mood. That's the whole point. It's about setting the mood. So you got to do certain things to get in the mood. And that is why the Prophet said, send messengers, preparation, kisses, words, different things that you can do to get in the mood. Because yes, no doubt, with work, with stress, children, all these things, sometimes you're not in the mood. Sometimes you might, you know, you want to set up a certain romantic dinner, a certain thing, just kind of like get things together to just move to. Sometimes you want to take a vacation away from the children. Leave the children with the grandparents on the weekend. Go somewhere private. Get a jacuzzi, get a private, setting. Get some candlelight, some rose petals. All these things are mubah. They're not like, oh, you're imitating the kafir. It's not really imitation, bro. It's just spicing it up. Different things, You can't say, okay, you're wearing a jacket, this is imitating the kafir. You know what I mean? It's just clothing. It's not necessarily something religious, okay? And that you are following the kuffar. But there are limitations, no doubt, right? We're not like celebrating Valentine's Day or anything like that. Every day should be, before making love, can be a nice, love celebration. So these kind of things, but making time, and sometimes it cannot be just like okay, now we're gonna do it. Okay, tomorrow at 8 p.m. No, just if you want to do that because you're busy, build it up. Send some messages, start teasing each other. That can build up the momentum that you know that tonight you're gonna meet, right? So that's gonna make it really cool, right? It's gonna make it really nice. But if you're just like, okay, every Thursday night at 8 p.m. we're gonna have intimacy, it's like it becomes boring. There's no build up. There's no anticipation. You don't look forward towards to it, and it just kind of like becomes like just a duty. Come on. Like some couples, they say that the wife kind of says, okay, I'm ready right now. Kind of just lifts things up, 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Done, just to get pregnant, just whatever, they feel it's like, this is not, subhanAllah, sadly, right? That's going to cause a lot of fitna within the relationship. So do get some time off, like get help from the parents, the grandparents, to take care of the children. Sometimes have some time alone. Wives and husbands make this big mistake that we do not block out time. And a lot of times the women, because they feel like they have to take care of the children, sadly some women who think that they cannot leave their kids with their grandparents, they're making a big mistake. You should try to block out for some time with your husband. He's at work, he's out, he's doing a lot of things. You have a bit more time to plan things. Plan it out. Take a bit of initiative in this case. And the husband too. Book a hotel. Get some things up. Some women say, no, I cannot leave my kids. Oh my God, I want to be at home. It's not right. You have to have some alone time. It is very important, guys. Please try to understand that it's for the sake of your marriage. Intimacy is very important because it's the build-up of love and affection, right? So, make it nice, make it a surprise, wear something, attractive. There are many things that can be worn. Even in the previous cultures, the Bedouins would have certain dresses under their abayas. There's certain things that can spice up, and the men love that, right? And even women love to do it. They will feel attractive, and that also calms them down and makes them enjoy the whole thing more, right? So that is part of it, right? Book time, make it, build it up, tease each other, seduce each other, enjoy it, right? It is important to spice things up, so it's not just like a duty, because it's not. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, "Hunna libasun lakum wa antum libasun lahunna." They are for you, a cover, and you should come to your women whichever you please in the right way, but come to your women in every way that you please. And there's only one exception, so there's different ways to come to women, not just one way, not just this way, right? There's a lot of ways, and the passion and the love, this can really build the relationship. Now on the issue, so we talked about positions, things to be spiced up. Now on the issue of oral sex, right? This is a big problem. Again, researching it in the English language, you will find a certain opinion, and it's just kind of like that. And usually the scholars, what they will say is that because you use the Quran to recite, you use the mouth to recite the Quran, hence it's not appropriate. And they go from a cultural perspective, moral, ethical perspective. But since when did we separate ethics and morality from life, from Islam? It's not a separate chapter. It is part of life, right? So everything is together. You don't separate things here and there. That's one thing. I respect the scholars, but again, among the Shafis and the Hanbalis, they've accepted oral sex. You'll have the difference of opinion. Some say it's haram, again, because of what I said. Some say it's haram because of the fluids. It's usually agreed upon, that's kind of agreed upon, not fully, but that swallowing the fluids is not, it's not permissible. And with regards to actually the oral sex, as I said, there's a difference of opinion. All right, the ones, but there's no evidence that is not allowed. So by default, the principle of Sharia is that there's no evidence that shows that it's not allowed, then by default it's allowed. Specifically, that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned anal sex that is not allowed. So if oral sex would have not been allowed, he would have mentioned it specifically, especially in this concept. And some scholars actually use this as a proof. They don't just say, okay, there's no evidence. They say because the Prophet ﷺ didn't mention it, but he did mention anal sex specifically on this topic, he would have mentioned the issue of oral sex, but he did not. And he said everything is permissible by default except anal sex, including oral sex. Some of the Hanafis, as I said, have mentioned, right? And interestingly enough, sometimes it only talks about the man receiving it and not giving it, which is kind of weird. But again, it just shows it is a fatwa. It is a verdict from the opinion of a person based on certain things that they see as evidence or not, right? But again, looking at the whole thing together, there's no proof that is not allowed, and by default it is allowed. To stay safe, what it is good is just, don't swallow the fluids. Okay, same thing with the breasts of a woman and using that. Again, not swallowing the milk, but if it happens, the scholar said it doesn't make you mahram to each other or anything like that. Okay, because it does produce a lot of pleasure, and a lot of women, there's a quite high percentage of women that cannot climax except from that type of stimulation. And a lot of times women will not climax and not experience that pleasure because the man kind of just goes in, it's just typical intercourse and nothing comes out of it. He pleases himself, but then the woman doesn't receive the pleasure, and sometimes she's not going to say anything, right? So again, looking at the circumstances, looking at the evidence again, and so on, I don't want to just give my opinion. I want to tell you that this is the difference. Some of the Shafis and the Hanbalis have said it's permissible. Some of the Hanafis and others, even among the Shafis, have said no, right? But again, going back to فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. You have to go back to Allah and His Messenger. You have to go back and look at the proof. Scholars have given different verdicts based on culture. As I said, the ones that you cover yourself, you should not show the aura of your own wife. You cannot see the aura. Imagine what kind of marriage is that you cannot look at your wife's. You see outside, everywhere you go outside, and you see all kinds of naked women. Stuff like, should lower your gaze, but you're gonna see it. But you cannot look at your naked wife. You know what I mean? Which is, that's a bit tough, isn't it? It's quite tough, isn't it? Right? But sometimes this is the fatwa of the scholars. Now, is that wahi, or that's a different story, right? You need to look at it. But again, there's no evidence to make oral sex haram, but there's evidence to make anal sex haram, right? Which shows that when there is something like that, the Prophet mentioned it specifically. Again, sadly, a lot of women do lose out when it comes to pleasure, because for the guys, it's much easier to climax just from intercourse in general. Yes, there are some exceptions where men need certain more stimulation, but in general, they will climax. In general, they will climax. So, but the women sometimes are left out, and a lot of women will only climax from that stimulation, from the clitoral stimulation, which happens or can happen a lot better through oral sex. Now, it can be, for example, using the hands, okay? Just manual stimulation. Is that allowed? That is allowed. That's agreed upon. So, a husband using his hands to pleasure his wife, the clitoral stimulation, and so on. And vice versa, the woman to pleasure her husband while using the hand. That is allowed without any difference of opinion. From what I've seen so far, there's no difference of opinion. Okay? So these are things that husband and wife need to talk about. They need to look, do more research, understand the fatawas, understand the rulings. In the end, you're responsible for it. I just kind of laid it out, what it is, what is the difference of opinion, what are the evidence, what are not, and so on. I don't want to carry anyone's issue, with me, just to educate people. But again, do look at the objectives of the Sharia as well, that a woman should be pleased as well, and sometimes she's not, okay, and she's only pleased that way. Obviously, living in this society, that's become a huge thing. And subhanAllah, there's a lot of issues that can be discussed in detail about this, but you're going to have to just take the course, inshallah, which is Your Wife Comes First, where I'm going to go a little bit more into, a lot more into detail, inshallah, to understand the issues of positions, pleasures, do's and don'ts, and, talking about oral sex, about especially for the men, obviously, because this course is going to be for the men, and so on. So I hope you understood that. I've tried to keep it as clean as possible. Obviously, when you talk about this, there's a lot of feelings and emotions that come into people. Sadly, a lot of people, have issues with this. But I told you there's quite a lot of books on fiqh talking about this issue. So we should be educated. The videos that are available on YouTube and so on are, I guess, only one-sided when it comes to oral sex. You have to do a bit more research. In the Arabic, there's quite a lot of books and discussions on this. More scholars have talked about sex and sexual positions and the fiqh of sex and so on in different chapters and different books. So alhamdulillah, I hope that this was beneficial, and you can leave some feedback inshallah. So far the feedback is very positive. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.